Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Wednesday webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about using quick measures with Power BI. So a few things about quick measures. The basics of it is they're just calculated measures that you can create without having to write DAX. You can also tweak any of the measures you create because it does write the DAX script, which we'll take a look at here in a little bit. Once you've created the quick measures, they become available fields to use on your Power BI report, which is handy if you're doing some calculations and then you want to show it in a graph or table. And the difference between quick measures and calculated columns is a calculated column will do the calculation at an individual row level. So if you were calculating an average, it would calculate the average of every row within your data set. And then if you were to try and put that on the face of your report, then you'd be looking at maybe like an average of an average or summing your averages together. It generally doesn't give you what you're looking for, which is where measures can come in. The measures work on your overall data set, and then you can filter them from there as you would like. So within all the quick measures available, which we'll look at within the desktop here in a moment, there's 6 different categories of quick measures. And then within that, there's almost 30 different options right now of quick measures. So you can see here with the list, there's aggregate types, filters, totals, things like that. And we'll take a look at each of the categories. When dealing with quick measures, I see a handful of them used, but there are alternative ways that you can achieve a lot of the things that the quick measures do, but it does come in handy for some mathematical ones. The time intelligence can be helpful as well. So when you're looking at the quick measures, you always want to take a look, is this the quickest way to achieve what I want or the best way? So we'll take a look at that, and then you guys can always make those determinations when you're building a report. So with the demo, we're going to go ahead and take a look at making some quick measures. And in this session, I'm going to be working with the Power BI desktop, which is available to download for free. So let's go ahead and pull that up. And I've already created a base report here with some information. I connected to data that's mostly available in GP. I did some sales transactions, some job cost fields, the customers and their balances, and then I have a basic table with some HR data on it. So the first thing that I want to show you guys, we're going to be looking at this sales table right here. So to access quick measures, up here on your top toolbar, it's just new quick measure. You can also right click on the field list and you can do a new quick measure as well from here. The thing that I will warn you about when you're creating measures, whatever table you are on over here on the right-hand side, that is what the quick measure will be created underneath. Now, if we create a quick measure that appears under customers, we still can use data fields from the other tables, but this is just more for where are you going to find your measure once you've created it. So since we're dealing with the sales table here first, I'm going to make sure that I have this. The SOP table is my sales transaction table. And I'm going to go ahead and select to do a new quick measure. And here under calculation, this is where we can see those different categories that we touched on. We have the options within the aggregates. We have the options within filters, time intelligence, the totals, the math operations, and text. So let's start up here. We're going to do this average per category. So when we select that, you get to choose what your base value is and then your category. So it's very simple. With this one, we're going to go ahead and expand our sales transaction table. And what I'm going to do is I want to see the average sales amount per customer on that table. So I'm going to go ahead and take the document amount as my base value, and it's automatically going to sum here, and that's what I want to keep it as. And then I'm going to do the same for the category, is going to be document amount. So we click OK. And now we don't see anything happen really on the face of the report. It does expand and show us, this is where we can see what was written in DAX. So this is the actual DAX that quick measure wrote. If you wanted to tweak it within here, you could, but nothing really happened on the face of our report. When we look at the field list over here now, we can see this doc amount average per doc amount. The quick measures always name it based on what you've put your values as, so I always recommend renaming it to what it actually is that you've calculated out. So if you click on the little ellipsis here at the right-hand side of any field, we're going to rename this one, and this is our average sales amount. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that over onto this table that I had previously created. And now we can see by customer. So for Aaron Fitz here, this is the total of all the sales transactions for that customer. And this is that average sales amount. So pretty straightforward with that, creating an average sales amount. So let's look at another one. For this one, I'm just going to select the customers table because that's the table I want it to appear under. And I'm going to do new quick measure again. And the next thing we're going to look at is this filtered value. Now, you do have the option to do that within quick measures, but when you filter, you can only filter by one thing, which is why I don't see this used a lot in most reports. A lot of people like to either have multiple filters, maybe they want to look at sales territory and a particular date time period, something like that. There's usually a few different filters people place on their reports. Or if you want to just filter a value, there's always the filters option on your individual visualizations. But that's not to say this could never be used. I'm sure there's just as many people out there using it as people I've seen that aren't. But for a filtered value, the first thing we want to do is what value are we going to be calculating? So in this one, we're going to say we want to look at the customer balance for a particular country. So I'm going to expand the customers table here. Now I've already cleaned up my tables, so there's not a lot to choose from, but there is a search box here. So if you had a lot of data, but you knew the name or something that was included in the particular field you're looking for, you can start typing it in and it will limit it to ones that match your text. So we're going to say we want to look at the sum of the customer balance, and I want to filter by country. So I pull over country, and then I can select a value. But this is where I can select only one value. So I couldn't say give me everyone outside of the US, or in this case, since we've obviously entered the data with United States and USA, I couldn't pick both of them. But for this, we're going to look at, I just want to see the customer balance for Australia. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now we see a field of the customer balance for Australia. So I'm going to pull that onto the face of the report, and I'm going to say I want this to just be displayed as a card. And here we can see a little over 79,000, almost 80,000 is our customer balance for Australia. Okay. So let's take a look at another quick measure here. And for this one, I had mentioned that my table 1, this one has HR data. So it's employees and end dates, so we can kind of match attrition and things like that. So for this quick measure, I'm going to right click here and I'm going to do new quick measure. I'm going to look at the time intelligence. And what I'm looking for is a year-to-date total. So especially when you're looking at things like an HR data table where you're going to have end dates that are going to span anywhere from when your organization was first started or when you first started your database to current. So sometimes it's easier than trying to filter through all of that to do something like, I just want to see year-to-date total. So I'm going to select year-to-date total. And on this base value, I'm going to say I want to know how many end dates, so how many people left within this year. So this did automatically default to a count of end date, but if it hadn't, if it had said, you know, some or earliest or latest, when you click on this down arrow here, it will tell you what the options are. Not a lot for end date because that is a date value, but this is where it would be for anything, whether it's sum, average, anything like that. Your options will always be on this down arrow. So I'm going to click on count of end date, and the date field we're using is the end date. Let's go ahead and click OK. And it's created count of end date year to date. So I'm going to pull that onto the report face and create a card as well for this one. So you can see we show that 82 people have left year to date. And this graph that I have down here at the bottom, I previously put on here, this is just showing the count of attrition based on year. So you can see when I hover over 2019, it shows 82. So this is just to confirm, yep, that's what it's doing. It's calculating total end dates within that year. So let's move this one up. Now the next one I'll show you pretty quickly here. I don't see this one used a lot, but I just want you to understand kind of how it works. And this one is under the totals. So they have running totals, a total for calculate category, whether you have a filter or not. We're just going to look at the running total, but what these do is they're just summarizing whatever field you're going to pick. Now, a lot of that can be done just by pulling a field over onto the report, or you'll see people using maybe just calculations as far as addition or things like that. But really, when you pull like document amount or anything onto the face of your report, you have an option to summarize it. So that's just why I don't see these totals used a lot. But we're going to go ahead and select running total. And we're going to pull over a base value of the document amount. And the field is going to be the same because we're just summarizing a total for that field. There is a direction option, whether ascending or descending. You will see this used if, maybe you were looking at like a date type value and you wanted to say, show me the earliest date of a sales transaction, or show me the earliest date, within some sort of field. Then you could look at like ascending, descending being pertinent, but with just summarizing, a lot of times it's not going to matter. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And we have a running total. And when I hover over here, you can see it's showing me the current running total of all the document amounts is 402,000, just a little bit over that. And we can verify when we're seeing here on the sales table and it has the total, it's just calculating it all up. Now I'm going to get into something that I do see quick measures used for more often. And it's usually when you're wanting to do some sort of math within your fields. So in this example, we're going to be taking a look at calculating gross profit and the percentage and adding it into this job cost table. I've also seen it used for things such as fill rates or completion rates, things like that. So within this, I want these to be under this job cost table. So I'm going to make sure I have that highlighted, and I'm going to do a new quick measure. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to calculate gross profit, and we're going to do a simple subtraction under the mathematical operations. And in the job cost table, I'm going to take the total amount we've billed, and then we're going to subtract the total actual cost for the job. So this is going to give us our gross profit. And here you can see it comes across as a name as billed amount total to date minus, we're just going to rename that. And I'm going to pull that over onto this table. So now when we look at any of our projects, we can see what the actual cost of the project has been, what the billed amount is, and what our profit is then from it. So we want to take this even further because, some of these can be different. If you have a $100,000 job, 10 or 20,000 might look really great, but if your job's only 30,000, 10 or 20,000 might not look so good. So we want to get that percentage on there. So we're going to go ahead, do a new quick measure again. And this time we're going to do a division one. And then for this, the numerator, we're going to select that gross profit. So once you create a measure, it does become that field, and you can use it for other things, whether it's further measures you're going to create, along with being available on the report. So we're going to say we want to take our profit. We're going to divide that by the billed amount. Okay. And then if we pull this over onto the table, oh, I forgot to rename it first. They get long on tables if you don't rename them. Let me go ahead and rename it. Okay. So we can see it's actually coming over as a decimal. It's not coming over as a percentage yet, just because we were dividing numbers, so that's what it's going to do. So to change that, I've got the measure highlighted over here, so gross profit percent. And if I go to the modeling tab at the top, you can see the format here is a general decimal number. And what I want to do is change that to a percentage. And now that field will display as a percent. So now we can see gross profits here, and you can get a better understanding of how your projects are looking from a gross profit percent level. So now the last quick measure I want to share with you, I see these used very rarely, but they can be kind of fun. And we're just going to open this sales table again. And I'm going to do a new quick measure. And we're looking under the text ones here. So there's a star rating and then concatenated list of values. So we're going to look at the star rating one today. So when we look at star rating, the first thing we want to do is select a base value. So for this sake, I want to rate my salespeople based on how much they're selling. I just kind of want to look, are you a 5-star salesman? Are you a 3-star salesman? Just what we're going to look at today. So from the sales transactions, I want to look at the sum of the document amount. You can choose how many stars. We're going to say this is a 5-star scale, and then you can choose your values. So they haven't sold anything. That's definitely a 0 to me. That would be the lowest they could be. And because we sell high amounts, you can actually see here the document amounts here. We're going to say I consider a 5-star salesman if they can sell 100 grand. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK on this. You can see it comes across document amount, star rating, and I'm just going to rename that to star rating. And I'm going to pull that over here to the salesperson table. And now we can see my salespeople ranked by stars. So you can see I've got a couple 5-star, couple 3-star. Was this necessary? I probably could have determined that if I just had this document amount, but maybe I wouldn't want the document amount. Maybe I just want something where I don't want people to know the total amount, but this just gives us an overall performance rating. You could do it if you wanted to rate customers or rate managers, maybe based on attrition levels. There could be some use for it if you would want to see it in a star rating way. So now we've covered the basics of a lot of these quick measures. They're fun to play around with if you have a need for them. There are other ways that you can achieve that. For example, the average sales amount we did here, it's helpful to have when you pull onto a table like this if you need to see a total versus an average sales amount. But you can also just pull over, if you pull over document amount here as a value within a visualization, you can change it to be average here within the chart. But again, if you're using that on a table, that's where a calculation could come in handy. So with that, that really is wrapping up the Power BI using quick measures. And we'll open it up for questions here just in a moment. But one other thing that I do want to make sure you guys are aware of, if you're interested, we do have our Premier Educational event coming up in November. There's a lot going on within the 2.5 days, lots of networking and sessions with information. You can learn more about the event and register on our website. So definitely check that out. Take a look at the agenda and see if it's something you're interested in if you haven't already. And then afterwards, we'll open it up for questions here. But if you do have any other questions that come up when you're working with Power BI or after the time, feel free to go ahead and reach out to me, and I'll be happy to look at any of your questions. And then with that, does anyone have any questions at this point in time? Perfect. Well, thank you so much for spending a bit of your day with me, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.